Not long ago, a top-ranking U.S. general said Americans must be ready to fight and die for Israel. So you might be asking yourself, why? Why would we send American soldiers to die in Israel? A friend of mine reminded me of this today, actually, this General Clark. You're probably smart enough to wonder, by now you are, what's the real reason that the United States and Israel are taking over Gaza? Is it really about Hamas, as neocons and Netanyahu would have us believe, or is Hamas the perfect cover to seize control of massive natural gas deposits that Palestinians own and control offshore, off the shore of Gaza and the Gaza Strip? Call me cynical, but I have heard this story before. Western powers using the cover of terrorism to seize control over massive oil and gas resources and oceanfront property so they can build ports. There's a reason we don't give a shit about landlocked Afghanistan, but we are building a second military base in Iraq, and where we're building that military base is right on or right next to Iraqi oil fields. So, of course, I thought we weren't in Iraq anymore. Like, why? And we're now building a second base, but this time it's right near oil fields. So we need to make sure we have control of that oil. Last week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was asked, how long will Israeli forces occupy Gaza after it's been destroyed? His response wasn't a surprise to me at all, or anybody watching this show, I'm sure. Watch.
President Biden has said that it would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza. Who should govern Gaza when this is over?
Those who don't want to continue the way of Hamas. It certainly is not. I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have that security responsibility, what we have is the eruption of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't imagine.
Yeah, so of course they will occupy it indefinitely, even after Hamas is long gone, because it was never about Hamas in the first place. Wake up. They're playing us like a fiddle once again. They love nothing more than to watch people argue on Twitter. You're an anti-Semite. You're pro-Palestinian. Does Israel have the right to exist? You don't think Israel has a right to exist? What's wrong with you? Stop killing babies. These elites are running around. They're running the show right now. They're just laughing all the way to the bank because their plan is rolling out exactly the way they want for everyone to be fighting about it. While innocent people, of course, are being killed. They don't really care about innocent people at all. And the same thing happened in Iraq. Millions of Iraqi civilians died as a result. Thousands of American soldiers died in this boondoggle. And remember Madeleine Albright when asked about collateral damage of children? When civilians are being killed, children are being killed. What were her exact words?
She said it was worth it.
It was worth it. So this is how they think. They don't really give a rat's behind about you. They care about their long-term plans. And we warned on this show from the very, very beginning of the Israeli conflict to beware of false flags. So let's come back to this whole thing in a second here. But first, some context around natural gas. Over the past week, it started getting cold in Europe. And this weekend, Europe started using that natural gas. It's stored up as a safety mechanism against an energy disaster that could face Europe. Across the board, countries in the EU started drawing supplies in order to heat homes and businesses. Then temperatures went back up a little bit in certain areas. But as soon as temperatures fall again, the same thing is going to happen. Tapping into this backup supply after the United States destroyed Europe's Nord Stream pipeline. It was a brilliant move by the United States, cut off Europe's flow of cheap natural gas from Russia and force Europe to buy it from the United States. It's a brilliant move, right? It's a brilliant business move. And that's exactly what happened. Europe started paying nearly double the prices that they used to pay to Russia. U.S. companies started turning record profits. Last year, Europe became the #1 destination for natural gas sales for U.S. companies, setting a new record. Look at this chart. This chart's amazing. Instead of a simple pipeline delivering gas to Germany and Europe, look at this. Now this massive spike to Europe from United States liquefied gas exports. Surging, of course, now to Europe. Instead of a simple pipeline delivering gas to Germany and Europe, now the United States puts it on liquefied natural gas on ships like this, and it transports it across the ocean. There's your green plan. That's a brilliant idea, right? We're all about environmental concerns. So instead of a clean gas pipeline that delivers it, no, let's go through all of the extra legwork and cost.
What
Carbon footprint and putting on a boat.
On diesel.
But probably. What else is going to? It's not solar panels, right? I wonder if it runs on natural gas. Actually, that'd be brilliant.
And like,
Well, it
hey,
usually
there's one way
is
we
a
can-
cleaner source of energy, but not if you ship it, all the way around the world. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, add in the extra layer
Well,
of carbon.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just going to say it, but it gives them a reason to not have to listen to people up in arms about fracking. They're like, we don't need to listen to these people anymore. We can get it overseas and not have to fight these people.
Yeah, we don't have to do it in our own backyard. We'll just buy it from America where they do fracking. So American companies are putting this liquefied natural gas on these ships, transporting it across the ocean. Europe pays almost 50% more. Anywhere, I mean, the prices range anywhere from like 35% more up to 50% more. Remember, German politicians outraged. They're like, why the hell are we buying our stuff now from America? We played you those sound bites here, members of the German Bundestag. So, in fact, right after the United States blew up the pipeline, natural gas exports to Europe exploded. Look at this chart. Look at the blue bars to the right of your screen, and look how China and Asia declined in American exports. China started getting more from Russia. Of course, the Belt and Road Initiative is going to help all of that, right? And Europe started getting all of their natural gas from the United States. And it's about to get much worse. According to Bloomberg, demand for natural gas is set to rise through the region, not going to slow down anytime soon. In fact, according to the EU's top energy official, says that the U.S. gas will be needed for decades. Decades. U.S. gas will be needed for decades to come, and without it, EU would face disaster, they admit. It's amazing how that happens. So then let's circle back to Gaza and a couple of points here, just so we have that context there. In the year 2000, there was a shocking discovery made right off the coast of Gaza in Palestinian-controlled ocean waters. It just so happened that geologists found a massive natural gas deposit. Whoa, really? So this deposit could transform a country, transform it, lift it out of poverty, completely alter it. Just look what it did to Norway in the 1960s. Norway, of course, went from being a poor fishing country to the most economically advanced country in the world. Norway leads every major category, from healthcare to life expectancy to income to safety, all thanks to oil, and they get to keep their own oil. Imagine that. They find it, they bring it out of the ocean, they get to keep the profits. Isn't that a novel idea?
I mean, it
That's
was. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, that's what Venezuela wanted to do. They wanted to basically give the oil back to the people, and America was like, no, we have too much interest in your oil down there. Let's form a coup.
Yeah.
Right.
They did have to, in Norway, fight the United Kingdom for rights to some of those Black Sea deposits. So it wasn't as easy as that, but they won most of it.
Yeah. Well, it turns out Britain has very long tendrils, which we'll see here in a second. So imagine, though, if African countries got to keep their own oil instead of the United States, France, and the UK. Can you imagine that? These African countries?
Every dictator that has imagined that found itself on the business end of a U.S. bomb.
Yeah, a business end of a coup, right? And those that are in power, of course, have aligned themselves with the UK government, with France, with the United States, mostly in Britain and France. And so all of the money and riches, of course, flows out into Europe rather than into those African countries, of course. So could you imagine a prosperous Africa? What would that look like? You can't, because we steal all their resources and their wealth. So you can't imagine that. But we'll do Christmas songs, to raise money for feeding kids in Africa. We'll do Christmas songs, and we'll get like Bono and Sting together, and we'll do those Christmas songs, and that'll raise money for them. So I'm sure that's the same thing as having billions of dollars in oil profits. Well, the same thing is about to happen to Gaza. As Jana points out here, the field was discovered in 2000 by BG Group. But as of 2021, its exploitation is still subject to negotiations. It's been estimated that Gaza Marine which is a deposit, contains upwards of 1 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. 1 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. And RT just did a great report on this Palestinian gas that sits right next to Gaza and the oil in the West Bank. Check this out.
You probably wouldn't know it, but Gaza is rich, gas rich, at least 1.4 trillion cubic feet rich, to be precise. But there's a catch.
Geologists and natural resources economists have confirmed that the occupied Palestinian territory lies above sizable reservoirs of oil and natural gas wealth in Area C of the occupied West Bank and the Mediterranean coast off the Gaza Strip. To date, the real and opportunity costs of the occupation exclusively in the area of oil and natural gas have accumulated to tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars.
Back in 1999, the Palestinian authorities signed a deal with British Gas. Just off the Gaza coast, they struck it lucky, and 2 wells were drilled. That's Gaza Marine 1 and 2. It was a multi-billion-dollar gift from God, an economic boon both home and abroad.
This is one of the key messages here today. There will be gas available for export. And from my conversations with Palestinian officials, including President Arafat, it is clear that they have no interest in just sitting on a gas surplus.
Fast forward to 2007, Hamas comes to power, and Israel launches an offensive on the Gaza Strip, leaving behind 1,400 dead Palestinians, but taking with it the gas fields. Now, within the year, Israel announced the discovery of the Leviathan natural gas field, which did include Gaza's riches, all in all valued at $453 billion.
So imagine what they could do with that money. In 2011, Israel tried to take control over the natural gas deposits that belonged to the Palestinians. So Israel tried to step in and swoop in and take the money and the wealth associated with those natural gas deposits and oil. Even Wikipedia, we know how corrupt Wikipedia is, right? Even Wikipedia explains how this went down. How under peace negotiations, Israel asked for control of all fuel and revenues destined for Gaza and the West Bank. That was about 12 years ago. So just to underline that point, hey, we're trying to find some common ground here in these peace negotiations. And as part of the negotiations, you want all of my oil and natural gas. How exactly does that work? So you want us to admit that Israel exists as a country.
And also admit that Israel has historical rights to the territory as well. Israel only asks the Palestinians to acknowledge that. They don't ask any other country to acknowledge that. That's part of the continued way that they kind of bomb these negotiations.
And also give us all of your oil and gas and the wealth associated with it. Well, of course, surprisingly, the Palestinians rejected that offer. Still, the natural gas just sits there. Why? Well, Shell, BG Group, which is now Shell, backed out under pressure from Israel, and no other company wants to touch it for fear of being blacklisted by Israel. Why won't BP touch it? Why won't Exxon touch it? Well, if you do, you'll feel the wrath of the Israeli government. In the meantime, Israel wants to become a new distributor of natural gas to Europe at the same time that Russian gas has been cut off. Iran is sanctioned and Syria is under U.S. occupation, squatting on their oil reserves. So in 2022, Israel's energy minister said this.
This is a historical moment in which the small country of Israel becomes a significant player in the global energy market. The Memorandum of Understanding will enable Israel, for the first time, to export Israeli natural gas to Europe. And it is even more impressive looking at the significant set of agreements we signed over the last year, which position Israel and the Israeli energy and water sectors as a key global player.
Oh, okay. So Palace, it turns out...
Go ahead. Does that mean Jason Bourne that we talked about yesterday potentially worked for Israel?
Going down and looking
to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline?
Perhaps, in fact, that is true. So turns out that Palestinians have long been in the way. As a now declassified memo from July of 1963 shows us, Israel, of course, rolled out a plan to build the Ben Gurion Canal. As some of you in the chat have been pointing out, saying, Clayton, do not forget about the Ben Gurion Canal. Yes, we're not forgetting about it. Here we are to talk about it because they can't control the Suez Canal. So build one themselves, the Ben Gurion Canal, that connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Gulf and connects the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean as a result. And by the way, the Suez Canal, of course, and the Straits of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, by all accounts, now under the control of BRICS, right? BRICS nations. So, of course, like this plan is still there, and you would absolutely want to have control of your own canal and the transport. As the memo points out from 1963, they would use nuclear explosives to clear the site, which conveniently sits next to where Palestinians live. And they would use conventional explosives then in Gaza, where it's a more populated area. This is literally in the memo, and I'll quote it exactly from the Israeli government at the bottom of your screen here. Approximately 130 miles of the 160-mile length of the route are in virtually unpopulated desert wasteland and are thus amenable to nuclear excavation methods. Conventional methods could be used in the vicinity of the populated areas and near the coastal plain near Gaza. So that's all right there. You can read the nuclear explosives used for the creation of the Ben Gurion Canal. Here's what it would have looked like right there. Of course, you can see it going right through Gaza. So they would have control. So it is remarkable that Gaza is rich in recently discovered natural gas and oil. It's very curious then why Western leaders are totally fine with Israel invading Gaza and the West Bank to take indefinite control over these oil-rich areas. And this is all happening while Europe needs a lot of natural gas. And the United States just blew up their pipeline. This has nothing to do with terrorism. It has everything to do with money and the control of natural resources. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. I think they like to wrap themselves in a blanket of terrorism, and that's how they justify these things. And absolutely, this is not to downplay what happened on October 7th. Yes, horrible, absolutely devastating what happened on October 7th. What happened on September 11th was absolutely horrible and devastating. But it's the response and it's the underlying politics at play here that are driving all of this, I believe.
Right. And I don't understand how people who are pro the Israeli response continue to use 9/11 as if it is a successful roadmap. Like,
Right.
Hey, the United States had 9/11. They waged 20 years of war on the Middle East and killed millions of civilians. That was fine. So Israel should do it too. 9/11 should be a cautionary tale of how not to respond. So I don't understand these comparisons as if, an Israeli minister this weekend said, well, no one put a time limit on, America's response to 9/11. That's not a good thing. That's not something that we should be emulating. Or anyone should be saying, that was good. We'll do it like they did.
I mean, Israel really wants to become the hub of oil and natural gas in that area. They want to be the ones that are providing the oil and gas to Europe.
Right.
They want to be the hub.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to make that money off of selling oil and natural gas into Germany and, forget Russia. Now that Russia, of course, is pipeline destroyed, Syria and Iran under sanctions, right? As RT reported, so that opens up Israel. Instead of having to ship it all the way from the United States, you could have this hub for Israel with all of that natural gas and oil that you could sell and make a lot of billions of dollars off of. So are the Palestinians ever going to get back control of this oil and gas?
Right, especially as the end goal is to occupy that region or get them all out. Are they going to let them work from abroad? Hey,
you can work remotely.
Yeah, work remotely.
We're going to push you out into the Sinai Desert in a tent. You can live in tents.
But you still can manage your oil and gas exports.
Right. Let's see how that's going to go.
Right.
Let's believe that if we see it. Yeah, I don't know.
We'll know how sizable it is, though, when the U.S. steps in to protect Israel's oil.
Like they did in Syria. Yeah, like they do in Syria. They're going to step in.
Like we do in Syria. And Iraq. If you've got oil, we want to protect it. We're here for you.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.